Trying to get Boo Carter, Bryce West, Jeremiah Beasley, a few others, Aaron Scott.
Hi there, welcome in. That's Michigan verbal commitment Jacob Oden out of Harper Woods, talking about some recruiting that he's doing. And we'll get to some of those guys that he mentioned coming up a little bit later on in this broadcast today. Well, it is great to be here on this Tuesday, getting going on time, getting going without a generator outside the Peach Mountain Studios. No noise pollution for the first time in 5 days. And you sit back and you listen, and it's just peace and tranquility. And you never knew how much you appreciate that kind of thing until you get it. So that just happened today. So that's got me in a pretty good mood. Also, that we're able to launch this show right at 1 o'clock when that wasn't happening yesterday. Good to see everybody here. We're here every day at 1 o'clock, live weekdays, talking about the latest in Michigan sports, presented by Rivals.com here on the Maize and Blue Review. And today, well, we've got some spring football news. Jim Harbaugh talked last week, and we're going to go through the items over the next days and weeks until the big spring game on April the 1st. I'll probably have an item every day. And so today, no different, some spring football news. Hunter Dickinson making a little bit of news. The near stomp that you may or may not have seen or heard about. We'll visit that. This Wisconsin game from this past Sunday. We'll have the video review. I will weigh in on it. But we'll start with the Oden 4, the Jacob Oden recruiting 4. And if you weren't paying that close of attention, Jacob Oden, who is a safety out of Harper Woods, recently committed to Michigan. And he was asked if he is doing some recruiting himself. And I had to listen close, and he threw out a few names.
Trying to get Boo Carter, Bryce West, Jeremiah Beasley, a few others, Aaron Scott.
So he threw out 4 names there. And so I figured, heck, who's Jacob Oden talking about with these 4 guys? And I have labeled it the Oden 4. He mentioned 4 guys there. And the question to him was, are you going to do any recruiting yourself? Well, this is who Oden is recruiting for Michigan. These are the guys that he wants to see in the Maize and Blue along with himself. So Jacob Oden, the 4 that he mentioned, the Oden 4, Boo Carter. If you're familiar with Boo Carter, you'll know that he is an outstanding athlete from Tennessee, the number 1 player in Tennessee. And at 6 feet, 180, what do you think? Safety, corner, slot wide receiver, X wide receiver. Heck, I guess you could be a running back. When you're an athlete, you can be anything, right? But those are the spots that you would at least think about without knowing, his preference or what Michigan's talking about where he is at. But you get a name like Boo and you like it, and he passes the look test, and he is one of Oden's 4. Another one is a name I think we're all familiar with. The ones follow the game is a corner prospect out of Cleveland, Ohio, in Bryce West. And this seems like Michigan and Ohio State are going to battle for West, and Oden is going to do his part. I like that he is mentioning the 4-star corner out of Glenville that is in his 4 that he is going to go after. So that's good. Part of Oden's 4. The other 2, Jacob Oden mentioned, Jeremiah Beasley, right in the backyard of Ann Arbor, out of Belleville, a 6'2" linebacker in Jeremiah Beasley. Oden wants him. I want him. Michigan wants him. Let's go. And then last but not least of the Oden 4, another Ohio prospect, another corner out of Springfield, Aaron Scott, a 4-star corner, also in Jacob Oden's 4. So last week I brought you what did I have? A 50 and 5 that I went through. And to recap those, I had Justin Scott out of Chicago. He's a 5-star. I had Aaron Childs, a 4-star out of Maryland. He's a linebacker. Right here in the state of Michigan, Brady Priestcorn, a tight end out of Rochester Hills. A running back that we mentioned yesterday out of Ohio in Jordan Marshall. He's from Cincinnati. He's got U of M in his Final Four. And then, of course, we're all waiting on Jaden Davis, and he's number 1 on the 50 and 5. So you've got my 5, and now you have the JOF, Jacob Oden 4, Boo Carter, Bryce West, Jeremiah Beasley, and Aaron Scott. That's 9. I don't think that's too many. If it is, I'm going to give you an and 1, a plus 1. And Amarian Stewart, who is a 4-star wideout out of Illinois. So there's 10 that are right on my radar right now for 24. Amarian Stewart is the plus 1 with the Oden 4 and the 50 and 5 right now. A 10 to consider for you to keep an eye on at this moment and how things are going, at least with recruiting, some of the stuff that I have been looking at. So there you go. A little update on what's going on when it comes to Michigan football recruiting, which is never too far out of our minds. Either is feedback from Michigan fans, and Scott making a declaration out of the gate saying that if we beat Illinois tomorrow, we go dancing. I think that game is on Thursday, but Scott, as I said yesterday, Michigan will be looking very good. And certainly I think that they will be included in the field. More on that coming up. But then, of course, they have more games to come, which will affect where they're at. When you're right on the bubble, if this was the bubble where my hand is, and Michigan beats Illinois, well, then I agree that they would be in the tournament. But then if they lose their regular season finale, that's going to put them right back on the bubble, which then is going to get them into Chicago in the conference tournament. And if they win, that's going to nudge them, I think, close and into the tournament. But they lose that one, I think they could be out. So I see what you're saying. I know that what you're talking about, but we will have to see on that. We, continue to hash out, look at the numbers, massage them, see what the experts are saying, have her own opinion on it and everything else. But I know where you're coming from. AJ is making a feedback here today as well. He says he hopes now that Sherrone Moore is the OC this year that he isn't reluctant to use all of Michigan's weapons. Well, I don't know why he would be. I don't think Moore is sitting in the office, Antoine, with his first crack, and he's looking at the offense, and he's thinking, man, I got a lot of players here at my disposal. I got a hell of an offense. I'm not using them. I'm not going to use them all. I think he wants to use them all. I think they want to. I think they've had success the last 2 years playing football with the way that they want, and having an identity, and that identity is running the football more than anyone else in the country. And that is going to limit some of your pass attempts. And to your point, maybe utilizing or being reluctant to use all of the weapons if they're going to grind it out a little bit more. The perfect version of the Michigan offense is being able to slam them in the mouth, punch them in the mouth, and run with the fabulous running backs that Michigan has, but then also utilizing the arms and the legs of J.J. McCarthy. Remember there was a point in the second half against Ohio State, and Gus Johnson had indicated that the script had been flipped for the Michigan offense, that he had pointed out that Michigan had thrown the ball twice as much as they had run it in that game. So an opponent for Michigan is going to dictate for every team. You think about your game plan, but how you want to attack. It's going to dictate on what you're going to do on offense. And can they practice in some other games, utilizing their weapons more and then being more dimensional? I don't think that's what cost them the TCU game. I think what cost them the TCU game was 5 plays. 2 of them by McCarthy throwing it to the other team for pick sixes. The Philly not so special. The fumble by Mullings at the goal line, and then the other play would have been the 3rd and 7. Remember, it was a 3-point game, and it was a 3rd and 7, and Quentin Johnson, DJ Turner had him stopped short of the first down. I mean, had a chance to tackle, a pretty good chance. Like, he was right there. And Johnson was able to slip out of the tackle, get around him, and then boom, went down the sideline for 76 yards. The Quentin Johnson touchdown, the fumble on the goal line, 2 pick sixes, and the Philly special. Those 5 plays, that wasn't the offensive coordinator being reluctant to open it up against TCU. Now, Michigan wasn't great running the ball. Michigan was, they had their mistakes. That's what cost Michigan the game, those 5 plays. Now, after that, we could talk about, well, they didn't control the line of scrimmage, which they had done all year long, up front with their offensive line, up front with their defensive line. All right, so there's 7 things, that we would go to, and then we could talk about more, not Sherrone Moore. We could talk about additional things after that, which cost them against TCU. So that's where I am sitting as we work through this day. Okay, now what's coming up next? Well, we have, let's see where it's at. We have Michigan spring football to get to. And as mentioned, Jim Harbaugh spoke last week, gave us a lot of things to discuss. I want to remind everyone here that you can join the Maize and Blue Review today. It's really easy to join. You go and type in michigan.rivals.com, and there's a subscribe button, and you get in there for a month or for a year, and you'll be able to know everything that's going on with Michigan before everyone else, and you'll have the Michigan conversation all day and all night. We'll see you over there. All right, we're talking about practice. It's a long ways until September the 3rd against East Carolina. So right now we're talking about practice, Michigan football spring practice until we get to April the 1st. That's not so long off. What, about a month, right? Tomorrow is the last day in February, and then March, a month, and then we got the spring game. I hope to see you out there. I am going to be attending the spring game. I don't think they're going to cancel it or anything like that. It's let's go. Let's do it. Jim Harbaugh on Thursday was asked about Blake Corum. We have speculated on Blake Corum and what Michigan could do with their 3 easy games that they have in the non-conference. They utilized them to their advantage last year, as we know, especially with the quarterback battle and some other things that they were able to do with their 3 walkthroughs last year. And then this year, it's similar as you take a look at Michigan's non-conference. They talked about you don't need to rush Blake Corum back, that's for sure. But Harbaugh was asked about Corum, and he said he's probably going to be a full go somewhere around the start of June for the full summer cycle. So he's not out there taking shots in spring ball, but he's working through, he's out there working. He's just not, a full go in spring practice. This is good news for Michigan here in that timetable. Sure, you could say it would have been great if saying, yeah, he's good to go now. He is, there's no limits on him. We've got him going. I guess there's a chance you could see that. What I did not want to see or hear from Harbaugh was that, well, we're hoping to have him ready to go for fall camp. That would have been, to me, I don't know, red flag. At least I'd have been a little, cautious about my full optimism that he'd be ready to go by the opener if Harbaugh was talking about being optimistic for fall camp, but he's saying probably a full go around the start of June. I think you feel pretty good about Corum being ready to go for camp, fall camp, sometime in August, and then obviously for the start of the non-conference against East Carolina. It does make you start thinking about, the Heisman Trophy and where that fits in with Blake Corum and the other backs that Michigan have. Corum was so awesome last year, and even like the those non-conference games, as easy as they were, and a lot of the different things that they can. And Michigan scored, in the 50s in all of those games. Remember that Corum had 5 touchdowns against Hawaii, and then he ran. No, he had 5 touchdowns against UConn, and then he really got going in the Big Ten because he ran for 245 yards against Maryland, and that's when he, put himself, on the map when it came to the Heisman. Those 5 touchdowns against UConn that he got it going with. So, there it is for Blake Corum. That is the good stuff that I heard from Harbaugh on Thursday, and it's never gets old looking at the running back room. Corum and Edwards, the best 1-2 punch in college football. I don't think there's going to be any debate from anyone on who is the best 1-2 punch in college football. Michigan likes to run the ball. They've got a good offensive line. More on that coming up. But the combination of Corum and Edwards, fabulous. Now you got Stokes and Cabana. I think you'll be really excited to see what these guys can do in the non-conference. From Khalil Mullings, we know what he can do. Can he hang on to the ball? Dunlap is interesting, and then you get the rest. Gash, who had the gigantic play against Illinois. You got Franklin, who's been around, and then the freshman Benjamin Hall. That's a good running back room, one of the best in the country. I'll say the best in the country. They got the best 1-2 punch in the country. And then when you add Cabana and you have Stokes, I'll go ahead. I can't say definitively that it's the best running back room in the country, but I can say definitively that it's the best 1-2 punch in the country. I thought this was interesting. And it comes from Pro Football Focus. Blake Corum, over the last, what are we talking about, 6, 7, 8 years, Pro Football Focus, you might be familiar with their work. They grade college players out, and these were the highest graded players in the Power 5 era since 2014. Kyle Pitts, the outstanding tight end now for the Atlanta Falcons. I thought he was going to be incredible in the pros, but we're not talking about him in the pros. When he was at Florida, he had the highest grade. There were 3 players that tied for the highest grade ever with a 96. Pitts, when he was at Florida. Chase Young, we're all familiar with his work, from Ohio State, the defensive end, who's now with the Washington Commanders. And then Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle from Alabama, who's wreaking havoc in the pros with the Jets. All of those guys tied for the highest ever ranking in Pro Football Focus. Blake Corum last year, just below the 96 grade, 95.9, the 4th highest ever Pro Football Focus grade since they began charting college football in 2014. Oh, that's it. And they say there was a serious case to be made for Corum winning the Heisman Trophy last year. So there you go from Pro Football Focus. Here's Jimmy asking about Donovan Edwards. I think Donovan Edwards, the one-armed bandit, is good to go. Now, let's see. We got some. I'm going back to get to some of these feedback. Is people talking about recruiting? Let's see. Kent asking a recruiting question. Should Michigan send Jaden Davis a wicker JD basket with maize and blue eggs as a way to say, you're our guy? Well, Kent, I know you're being funny there. That would be a violation. You do not want to send anything to anyone as a recruiting inducement, whether it's small or large. We could laugh and everything else, but no, they would not want to do that. Michigan knows, or Davis knows, that Michigan wants him, and he is supposed to come in for the aforementioned spring game or some spring practices. And, Michigan at that point, they will be looking over to the corner and say, hey, Davis, you see that basket right there with all those eggs in? You see all that green underneath, that fake green grass underneath? There's some real green, if you know what I mean. If you come to Michigan, I don't know how they're going. I don't know how they're laying it out there and proposing it, but that's it. That is it. All right, let's take some more feedback in here. Andre is talking about Springfield, Ohio is Sockeye country. When he hears about Michigan recruiting Southwest Ohio guys outside the Cincy area, I don't get my hopes up. I can understand that. And yet with Michigan turning the tables now on Ohio State, this would be something where over the last 20 years, you could look at it and say, I don't know how you could expect. Well, now how you'd expect it is that Michigan go on down there and say, hey, you want to be part of a team that's going to the Big Ten title game? You want to be part of a team that's trying to win it all, the college football playoff? Forget Ohio State. Come on in here and go to Michigan. Antoine says you don't have to abandon Michigan's identity to use, Michigan's identity to use Michigan's talent. I'm not saying abandon the run or even run less, but you can still utilize the weapons. I'm with you. I don't have any arguments there. Utilize the weapons and continue to run. The only thing I'd say is there's just so many plays. But yeah, I would like to see them to utilize all the weapons, continue to run, and get it done. That's what I'm saying. So that's where I'm at. Eddie says he doesn't think OSU is worried about Michigan when it comes to recruiting. They don't target the same athletes. Well, I think in the past, Ohio State, and maybe that is continue, or they just look out there and they're just like, we can get anybody we want if it's in Ohio or anywhere else. The recruiting, it speaks for itself when it comes to Ohio State. They go out there and they pick anybody they want and they get them. Now, it's about the success that Michigan has had recently, Eddie, where Michigan could get in on some of these players that they couldn't before, and maybe they will be able to pry them away from Ohio State. So that's what I'm saying about it. That's where I'm at. So I think you're saying the same thing. You're in there. Sam wanted to know specifically what the diagnosis was for Edwards' broken or dislocated thumb, another hand injury. You're asking what the specific diagnosis was. Was it a broken, dislocated thumb? Is dislocated and broken? I guess those are two things. I don't know off the top of my head what it was. I'll see if I can look into that. And so to be able to do that, I don't want to. If I was going to guess, I was going to say dislocated, but that's a guess. And I know you want to know. Sam, not eggs nor hamburgers. People like to make jokes about those hamburgers. Remember, I'm not one that likes to make jokes about the hamburgers. Michigan, it wasn't so much about the hamburgers. It was about Michigan making contact during a dead period in COVID, which was a no-no. And if you're going to break rules in the way the NCAA is going, you should break the big rules because they aren't able to do anything. Like the big rule about paying the players money, you can't do anything about it. NCAA can't do anything. They can ask the player, "Did you get the money?" The player would say, "No." That's it. You can't do anything. It's over. But when you go, you could say it's a small thing or not. When you're contacting somebody through a dead period, when you have coaches going out there, the four little small things that Michigan did, well, they got caught. So should there be no rules or just the big rules that you can't enforce? So, anytime somebody uses the burger defense, I think that they're just awash too much in the maize and blue, and they can't see actually what's going on out there. But I get it. Everybody likes to, have a little laugh about the hamburgers and everything. And I don't know. I think that's going to end up costing Michigan still, or potentially costing Michigan. I think they should be able to get that and put it in the rear view mirror. Daniel wants to know about basketball recruiting. Well, what we don't know, Daniel, is what's going to happen after this season. There's a lot of different guys and some scholarships that could open up, and yet, everybody could come back. And then they've got Papa Conte, who is a 6'10" player out of Connecticut who is committed. And then they got George Washington III out of Dayton, Ohio, a 4-star 6'2" guard committed to come in. So right now they don't have any scholarships open. And in 24, they've got I think a point guard, top 100 point guard, and Christian Anderson out of Atlanta, Georgia. But those are the commitments right now. Other than that, if you're looking for some names, I'll have to get to work on that. If you're looking for something, bring up Ohio. Everybody wants to start talking about Ohio. Ohio State recruiting. And he says Ohio football isn't what it once was. Glenville is reemerging, and Ohio State is grabbing their 4 and 5 stars. Yeah. Well, the big difference to me is that Michigan has turned the tables on Ohio State. And if I have to predict right now, like you say, like this time last year, it was a little bit of a relief, 1 in a row. It's like, hey, let's enjoy the offseason. 1 in a row over Ohio State. Oh man, that was great. You get 2 in a row and you go down there on the road and you're able to do it. Well, that was a hell of a statement by Michigan being able to do that this year. Any way you want to slice or anything else, 2 in a row, looking at how this series has gone. And now having this next game, I would say that all signs point to Michigan beating Ohio State this year. The game is being played at Michigan. Michigan has the returning quarterback in this situation, in this game. Ohio State has not been able to match. They preached it all last year, and Michigan has built a team and a program that Ohio State can't match up with when it comes to the physicality. Ohio State has done a lot. Look at Ohio State was standing toe-to-toe with Georgia, being over there and almost being able to beat the Bulldogs. And yet Ohio State only scored 3 little measly points at home against Michigan last year. And, the year before that, what was that one? 42-27. I mean, these games, if Michigan had, squeaked one out 2 years ago at home, like, woo, oh man. And then if this last year was another close one, yeah, you look at it, you win the game, but it wasn't complete domination 2 years ago, but it was with Michigan's offense. It was complete domination. This past year, with Ohio State only scoring 3 points in the second half, That was complete domination by Michigan at Columbus. Right now, Michigan is poised to win 3 in a row. I mean, it's a big deal. Richard is saying it. There you go. Let's move on from recruiting, from spring football to basketball. We've got some basketball news. We've got some bracketology updates for you. And we also have this Dickinson near stomp versus the Badgers. And I say near stomp. Let's watch it a couple times here. And if you have not seen this, Dickinson runs over the player wall over on the right side, and then you can see it looks like he stomps him as he's going. There it is. Boom. Oh, see that right leg goes up in a chopping manner. Now, let's see if it stays. Oh, I like the slow down version. If it could stay slow, but if you're able to watch that right foot, boom, it comes down right there. Here's the thing. When it comes to this play, that I've watched it a few times, a number of times, and slowed it down and everything else. And if you look at that right foot, I came to the conclusion the first time that, yeah, he runs him over and it's an offensive foul. Yeah, it looks like you could make a case for a stomping motion, but since Dickinson is moving forward, I think you can reasonably say that, he wasn't attempting to stomp him. But then if you really examine it, and you can't slow it down enough here, I was able to blow it up and look at it a little bit more. What you can see is that his foot doesn't look like it actually makes contact. The right foot that goes up and it comes down in a stomping manner. If you get the nice enough view, and I can't get it here, you're able to see that he actually misses the player and does not stomp him at all with his right foot. It does not look like he makes contact with him. So, when it comes to the near stomp, it could look like it. You could make a case for it, and it's worthy of discussion. But when you really zoom in on him and look at it, he could have been called for an offensive foul there. But I think like if somehow the referee would have saw that and they would have stopped and they said, hey, we got to go take a look at that. It looked like, I got to stomp. And they went over there and they spent like the 5 minutes, going over the film. I think they would have come to the scores table and they would have said, we've got nothing. Because they can't call on a review an offensive, like you could have called a foul. They could have on Dickinson. He does kind of make contact with him, runs through the guy. You could have called an offensive foul, but they didn't. But they could have if they spotted it, looked at what looked like a kicking motion and a stomp. But if they would have gone to it and they would have been able to slow it down and look, they would have determined there was no contact with the right foot of Dickinson. No flagrant one. No flagrant two. Play on. They're good to go. So that was something. I saw a lot of surprise Wisconsin fans putting that on Twitter, talking about, dirty scumbag Dickinson. And, you get that part like of what's, I tried to look at it like, who was the Wisconsin player for like 5-6 years that everybody hated? Ben Davidson, I think his name was, from Wisconsin. It wasn't just Michigan fans. Everybody that wasn't a Wisconsin fan hated Davidson. He is an edgy, dirty player. If that was Davidson that ran over like Eli Brooks and did that, Michigan fans would be like, "This son of a bitch." And, you get that. And then there was also some Illinois fans that one of their players named Griffin from 2 years ago, he got suspended for 2 games. He was playing great, but there was a video of him stomping another player and he got 2 games. And they were like, Illinois is like, Dickinson better get suspended. Our guy got suspended. There's the precedent. Well, okay, but they, didn't look close enough at the video. And what you need, and so if this was the only angle, I could tell you, or if this was the only thing that you would see, I think you could make the case that it's close, but would there be enough video evidence that you could say that that was a stomp? I would have said no. I think you could make the case that because he was moving forward, he was just trying to get to the offensive glass. Furthermore, I was able to look at it where I could determine if you slow it down and just look that it does not look like it looks like it's irrefutable video evidence that he is not hitting the player. Somebody was discussing earlier on the Mason Blue Review because that Dickinson's comments of the Badger fans being scumbags and him wearing the ski mask. None of that should matter, and things like that shouldn't matter. But your reputation precedes you, and also things like that do matter. They matter in sports and they matter in life. Like you go to you watch, or if you've ever been involved, when you see guys in court, when they go over and you're on trial, they tell you they don't just come in wearing some kind of t-shirt or wearing some sweatpants, unshaven. That's not what they say at all. Wear a tie, shave, whatever. Look is, that's going to help you. So you wouldn't think like, hey, you jurors are supposed to be looking at the evidence. They're not supposed to be looking over there to see if somebody's wearing a shirt and tie or if they shaved or not, but it happens. So I think even when it comes down to the Big Ten office, they could be swayed. When it came to the ski mask and stuff like that. All right, let's move on. We've got some bubble stuff, and the bubble stuff up above. This is Joe Lunardi from ESPN, who has Michigan outside looking in of the tournament as things sit right now. They're the fourth out of the first four out: Clemson, North Carolina, and Arizona State. It's a good match for teams that you want to be rooting against this week. You'd like to see all these teams fall: Arizona State, North Carolina, and Clemson. You wouldn't mind seeing Boise, West Virginia, Whiskey, Oklahoma State. You wouldn't mind seeing all of those teams lose. We know all of them are not going to, but you've got something to root for. Meanwhile, Jerry Palm from CBS, his bracketology, he has U of M as the first four-team out. So he has them 3 spots higher than Lunardi. And that's what's going to happen. I could probably find another 2, 3. I know DeCourcy from he's working for the Big Ten Network now. He'll have his bracketology. There, 3, 4. Hell, there's probably 10 other guys that are doing it, guys and girls that are doing bracketology. They're all not the same. That's why when you say, yeah, Michigan just needs 1, or I say, Michigan needs 2, or the magic number is 20. I could say what I believe, and you could say, no, that net ranking's a little shaky when it comes down to Michigan, and it's their quad 4 losses more than their quad 4 wins, and we get a root for Pittsburgh and all these different things that are going on. All of it, can be true, but there's enough discrepancy even in the guys that this is all they do is break down the bracketology, where we could be sitting here a week from Sunday, which is Selection Sunday, and Michigan could be firmly on the bubble. And I feel like, they've got 17 wins. If they ended up with 19, so let's say they split these next 2 games and then they win 1 game in Chicago, very easily could happen. 19. Boy, there'd be some that would have them like as the first out, maybe the last first in, it would be right there. If it happens like that, if it gets to a week from Sunday and Michigan doesn't get in, there's always, when they have Selection Sundays, like, who got snubbed? And Michigan got snubbed. Well, you can get quote unquote snubbed if you are right on the line. If Michigan got to 20 wins, and they did not get in. That would put me in the case, especially if you look at Lenardi, like, oh yeah, Michigan's in, Palm, oh, everybody's in now. Everybody had Michigan in, they got 20 wins. And then they didn't make it in, then I would feel like they got snubbed. 19, I don't know how much, what I would think that they could get in, but I'm not going to sit around and be like, they got snubbed. 20 and not getting in would make me feel like they got snubbed. So that's how I feel about it. All right. That's where I'm at. Let's get to some of the feedback before we tell you about tomorrow's show. I'm getting out here, going back here. People still talking about, you start talking about Ohio recruiting. That gets people going. You know what I mean? Richard talking about the Dickinson near stomp, said he's our bad boy, just missed. Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, maybe he got lucky that he, wasn't able to connect there and was on the 3-point shot. Sam talking about something that I was going through this week. He says he lost power due to the ice storm on Wednesday night. Didn't get it back till Sunday night. Had a generator, portable TV, and a digital converter. Game on broadcast TV, so didn't miss the game on Sunday. Ooh, so you had the old school. This is like having rabbit ears or the antenna back in the day. Now if you have the digital converter, so you're taking it out over the air. How about that, Sam? Let's see my own personal experience. Thursday at 12:30, boom, no power. It came back on Saturday during the day for a couple hours and then went out again. Talking about the cable. The power was out all the way from Thursday to, I think, this morning. Whew. I'm just happy this generator it's believe me, I would rather have the generator buzzing in my ear and not have any heat. But that thing, it would be like, sleeping next to a lawnmower for 5 days straight. It was rough. That's it. Yeah, let's give it up. I'll give it up to you too, Sam. Great job, Sam. That's it. Let's see. Still some recruiting talk. What size shoe would have done to that stomp? The name calling here. That's it. Still, these guys debating amongst themselves about third base and about Ohio State recruiting. I get it. That's it. Oh, something that was brought up last week, and actually the very first feedback was from Antoine, who said the reason he keeps bringing up using 2 offensive lines because college football will probably move to extra games and we're going to need more people to survive longer, and he wants to be ahead of the curve in terms of being prepared for this. Not only that, it's an advantage that we should be using. Now, I don't remember the genesis of the conversation, if somebody just brought it up out of the blue or if it was Antoine. And then we had Blank who said, well, the NFL teams had used it last year. And I thought, I don't think so. And I said, who was it? And Blank told me the Eagles and the Cowboys. Well, I did look because I did not remember that. It doesn't mean that I was right, but I did look at the Eagles and the Cowboys. And this was from, well, here's the Eagles this year were ranked by Pro Football Focus as the top offensive line. They have a pair of all-pro offensive linemen in Kelsey at center and then Lane Johnson out at tackle. A third member of their offensive line made the Pro Bowl, and their left tackle, he doesn't come out. So if they were doing no rotating in Philadelphia, they may have lost some of these guys, and they did lose Lane Johnson for a while. I think he had a groin or a shoulder. I don't remember which one. But they were not rotating offensive linemen willingly. They had to put some different guys in there because of injuries, and that's what it came down to with the Cowboys as well. Because reading about the Cowboys, this is from their website, they discussed at every turn how they had to weather various injuries dating all the way back to training camp without ever missing a beat, constantly being rotated and moved around like an intense game of chess. That's because they had Tyron Smith, who missed a bunch of time. Tyler Smith, the rookie, came in. And what they did, Smith said, yeah, it was versatility. We have been shuffled around so much, and they got all the reps. But they did not rotate an offensive line willingly. Now, you're talking about in the future and having to play more games and everything else. Look, having depth on your football team is great. Are you going to be able to keep depth with your football team now that, like, we talk a lot about the Michigan offensive line now? Yeah, if everybody stayed with what they had right now, they would have a really strong 2 deep, and you could say maybe even a strong 3 deep. They would have the best offensive line group in the country. How reasonable, feasible, likely is it that Michigan is going to be able to keep all of these guys with the transfer portal sitting right there? And their other teams like, you can come in and start for us right now. We need a right tackle. We need a left tackle. Are the dudes on Michigan going to be like, I'm just going to chill third string? Probably not. So, yeah, while it sounds good, you'd love to have the depth. It's just not happening. And in terms of a team being able to roll, if Michigan did have all those guys, could they sit around and blast 2 offensive lines? Well, it sounds interesting and all of that. When you're an offensive lineman and you're used to playing, these guys want to play all game long. I don't know how much they want to go back and forth about, and all of this. Will there be a team that has that kind of depth where they have 10 offensive line and, one series, the other one gets in? I've said this before. I like teams that zag in college football, and when it works, of course, you try something very unconventional, and then it works, and you can end up looking like a genius. Jim Harbaugh looks like that in a lot of ways, of Michigan going back and just running the football like it's the 1970s. 2 years ago, when I heard Josh Gaddis in the summer, Gaddis was asked, what about the Michigan offense? Are you going to be able to use something, to this effect? You're going to be able to use all of the weapons and really open it up and everything else. And Gaddis sounded like he had the most cliche answer that I've heard around Michigan football for the last 50 years. Gaddis said that Michigan, what we're getting back to is we're going to run the football. Okay. That's what he said. We're going to get back to run the football. We really want to run the football. I rolled my eyes a little bit, but he couldn't have been any more, he couldn't have been telling the truth anymore with what he was saying there about Michigan running the football. But it's, swapping in the offensive line feels a little bit like, swapping quarterbacks. I'm not in favor of the quarterbacks and rotating them. And that's when we were talking about last year about all the, maybe they'll play McNamara here and JJ there, and how they were spotting McCarthy, the year before. I wasn't in favor of that last year. And then Cade, after the first game, when he came out and said, there's not going to be any. Harbaugh said we're not doing the rotation game this year. Maybe he said it earlier than after the first game. Maybe he said it in fall camp. But when he came out and said, we're not doing the rotation game, I was like, there you go. That was big news from Michigan when I heard that. All right, tomorrow we'll have the coach on, and that is Jim Scarcelli. We'll see what he's thinking about when it comes down to Michigan, and that will be at 1 o'clock.